Well, what do you think I mean, I'm curious about what do you think the space is for, like, as more and more podcasts keep cropping up, and I'm targeting this sort of at the two of us, but also just more
Mhm.
generally speaking, like, what is the role in all of this? Slash, is this like an effective, is this where we're heading? Like, where everything is just going to be podcast debate? Like, I don't know. I in the world of thinking about these top, like, you can get just more and more niche and more specific. Um, there's just a podcast to fill like every void. Are we in danger of like getting in the way of like political action by there just being more and more podcasts?
My gut reaction is to say, yeah, probably. So maybe we should hang it up and just stop. Um, and kind of like ultimately, like the function of this media is for people, both who make it and consume it, to be like, oh, we're doing something by we're doing something by it's peak liberalism. We're doing something just by talking about the ideas. Like,
Mm-hmm.
no, you're not doing anything. We're just talking. First of all, I'm doing this because I like to hear myself yap, and I like to hear you yap.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm under no illusion that this is in any way like politically meaningful. I just like doing it because it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that I mean, you're really making a critique of like media more broadly,
Yeah.
um, where it's like you get the good feels that you would get from political participation if you watch like um, a somewhat politically progressive piece of media where you're like, well, that was so based.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Fuck, I can't remember the term for this. I'm 90% sure it's in the first like 20 pages of capitalist realism.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's basically it's kind of like the using the good feelings that you get from consuming media that's like progressive in nature to supplant actual political action.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I think what I'll say is that, I mean, we're also not helping anything by like, if the two of us like cold turkeyed the internet, like,
Yeah, it
yeah,
doesn't
maybe
help
some
either. Yeah.
people are gonna follow us and hop off the bandwagon, but the amount of money that's being spent on making social media as addicting as possible, like, we're not going to
Hmm.
create a mass movement of people in the current political landscape, in the current like world landscape. We're not going to get a mass movement of people to like quit the internet and like go back to spending their free time in at the public square, whatever that actually is,
Hmm.
any like if there is such a thing anymore. Um, we're not going to convince enough people to just cold turkey it. It's
Yeah.
this, yeah. So
Well,
I don't think that you actually gain anything either by trying to like hop off the internet and saying like, look at me, everyone. But
mhm.
like, look at to who? Who are you? Because you can't speak to anyone anymore because anyone who's interested in anything is engaged in the internet. So we might just be like, I think we can maybe recognize that there's a lot of problems here and a lot that's going to play out in ways that we don't know. But I'm at a point where I'm also just like, there's nothing I can do to stop it. So let's just roll with it and try and turn it into
we
the
just
best
have to
outcome
we
that
just
we
have to
can,
you have to go
which
through
is
it. Yeah. There's no
admittedly
going
like
back.
some self cope. But it's interesting to me too because it also seems like the incentive structure. I mean, it's where sort of capitalist incentive structure ekes its way into everything. Where if you're like if someone gets introduced to Marx or socialism or any sort of leftist anything, the incentive structure right now is such that like it's almost more not almost, I would say it's clearly more appealing to meet human psychological need to look at someone like Hasan and say, um, if I can just get to the point where I'm talking about socialism full time and making a bunch of money, then like look at all the time I'll have to spread the message and I'll be doing so much good. But it's like really kind of what we're all like, we want money and freedom for ourselves. And like we're all just working towards getting there. And it's not actually like, do you know what I mean? Like it's just like a
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, like no one is immune to the incentive structures in a system that like if I materially checked out tomorrow, if I was like, I don't care about money, I mean, I'd be fucked.
Yeah.
Actually, I specifically probably wouldn't be fucked. I'd probably just be a loser who lives in my parents' basement forever. But I specifically wouldn't die. But I mean, the reality is that like a lot of people would, and those who wouldn't die would be in just fucking awful situations. So you can't blame people for that.
No,
I'll
I'm
sort
not.
of
It's not a blame. Yeah. But
no,
anyways,
yeah,
go ahead.
sorry,
Go ahead.
no, blame is the wrong word, but um, it makes sense rather that people would follow that incentive structure. Um, I think what is again the problematic part is to think that you're doing something that you're not actually doing, um, and to think that this somehow replaces like any kind of genuine political action, um, which it doesn't. But I don't know that the goal for everyone. The goal for me is certainly not to be able to do this full time and talk about socialism and communism and Marx all the time. Um, that's not my goal here. But
What do you let's imagine the podcast blew up and we made enough money on Patreon and ads or whatever to make a full-time income. Are you still working another job? Is that your
that's a good question. I have some life stuff going on that might mean maybe. Um,
Mhm.
and I don't know. Part of me is genuinely scared of full-time online content because I feel like it makes you untethered from the world in some
Yes.
sense. And that scares me a lot. And so
Yeah.
part of me is like I might keep some kind of a job. Just that didn't happen.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm concerned about that too.
Mhm.
Um, if we ever got to that point,
If
because I feel
yeah,
like
it's yeah.
so much of what drives me right now is like all my frustration at work. Um,
Mm.
and if
Mm.
I was just in the time we weren't recording or making content, I was just like playing video games or going to the gym and just like having reasonable amounts of fun. Um, yeah, there would be a level of intensity that I wouldn't feel anymore in terms of just like politics and engaging. It would
Mhm.
become purely an imaginary um, exercise as
Yeah.
opposed to something that affects me. So I'm nervous about that too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's that's fair. Um